roll out plans with the community. Our surviving families did everything right. They applied early, checked their status, and waited, but the system failed them. We must ensure it does not happen again. On behalf of our surviving families, TAPS appreciates the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The written statement of Ms. Haycock-Lohman will be entered into the record. Appreciate your testimony. With now, we will move on to questions, and I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. Deeply appreciate your willingness to come and testify in front of the committee and share some of these examples and stories with us. I know you have quite a few folks that you've spoken to that have been deeply affected by this, and from our position on this committee, to the extent that we offer an apology for that, I want it to be heartfelt and sincere that we want to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and we want to work with you on that. I'm committed to working with the VA to re-engage that periodic outreach to our VSOs so that there is a flow of information back and forth where they can hear from you and you can hear from them and vice versa. Also, I began to think about potential policy changes that might be effective in helping to ease this, one of which was the certificate of eligibility. Instead of waiting until a student is about to enroll in college, which might be 10 or more years after they would become eligible due to the death of a parent or family member, why not furnish the certificate of eligibility upon the time that they're eligible? That way it's one less step in the process later on in trying to accumulate military records from 10 or 15 or more years prior to that, for example. So that is something that we're going to look at. I know that there was concerns of students that may have been dismissed from school because enough time had gone on. I think there's a 90-day window that they cannot take action against a student, and some of that may have, unfortunately gone beyond that threshold. Do you know of any institution that, that removed from enrollment a student that fell into this circumstance of not having payment authorized?
We heard of quite a few schools that threatened to do so. Our casework team is phenomenal and reached out directly to the schools, provided them with the law, provided them with all of the publicly available information, which is very little from VA, but really tried to work with them, as well as we work with a lot of private scholarship organizations to try and make sure that there was enough of a payment made for those students if the school was truly threatening that, to make sure that they weren't going to be dropped. But the stress and anxiety of that was something that was incredibly difficult.
So no schools that we know of and that you have heard of disenrolled or unenrolled a student during this. Not that that defends the delay, but we want to make sure that there aren't any schools that actually followed through on that, to the best of your knowledge.
Not that we know of, because we made sure those, working with other organizations to make sure those payments were at least made to prevent that from happening.
Okay, thank you. And then do you know how many of the students within the TAPS program were affected by this specific delay?
We heard from several dozen cases that were true hardship, which we worked directly with your staff to establish. We heard from even larger numbers, more in the hundreds, potentially thousands, that were delayed, but didn't consider themselves true hardships, especially if they had other scholarships and things that were helping supplement at least the tuition piece. Okay.
And then we've heard that the Chapter 35 backlog has essentially been extinguished. Have you heard from any of your members that does not substantiate that claim?
Not at this time. Every case that we sent forward was paid fairly quickly, and we have not heard from anyone that they still have outstanding payments.
As of the last few weeks or so?
Correct.
Okay. And what, I guess you may have mentioned this in your testimony in an earlier question, but do you have any regular contact with the VA through your organization, or is that really just sort of halted?
Normally we do. We actually have a memorandum of understanding with the VA, and we've worked closely with Education Services in the past. The stakeholder meeting that I mentioned was held monthly for many years, but the last VA stakeholder meeting occurred in December of 2024. We were told in January that they were moving them to quarterly, and then the first 2 quarterly ones were canceled, and then everything has been removed from the calendar since.
Okay. And then have you heard for the upcoming semester, the January enrollment, obviously there are going to be individuals applying for either continuation of benefits or for new benefits that they would be enrolling in. Have you heard of any lengthy delays beyond, maybe a couple of weeks or so for these claims to get processed?
Not that we're aware of, but we also have not been briefed, and to my knowledge, schools have not been briefed on any possible delays or things that schools can be doing to better support students if there is a delay.
Okay, but you haven't heard from either schools or beneficiaries that you're affiliated with that have had lengthy delays for the January semester?
We generally wouldn't know until a payment doesn't arrive. So
Okay,
because
so
the way
end of
VA
January.
pays, we wouldn't even generally know until February because VA pays in the rears. So
Okay.
January payments wouldn't arrive until February 1st.
Okay, thank you. I'll now recognize Ranking Member Pappas for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Haycock-Lohman, for joining us here at this hearing. We really appreciate your testimony. Now, VA had been calling this problem for months a technical glitch, but it really wasn't technical at all. It was a result of poor planning and management. And I'm just wondering if you can tell us more about the level of communication that you may have or have not had with VA to understand this challenge. And so, did you receive direct communication from VA about this issue, or how did you learn about it?
We learned from students in schools. We started getting large numbers of outreach, and other VSOs were hearing similar things when we actually do have biweekly education calls within the VSO community to communicate the things we are hearing. And we all started hearing a lot of the same things. We were able to work through some back channels and start hearing, especially from committee staff, that they were hearing consistently that there was a bigger issue. But to date, we have not received any briefing or messaging from VA on the pathway forward.
Okay. So, and as you said, no stakeholder meeting, no quarterly meeting, those haven't been happening, no direct communication. So you're piecing this together with your colleagues from other organizations and based on what you're hearing directly from your members.
Yes, as well as committee staff who were hearing the same thing and were getting more communication, at least than we were.
So, like you, I've been hearing from people on this issue, from constituents who have been impacted by the failure to pay benefits on time. And I spoke to one of those stories in my opening statement. And so here I ask unanimous consent that the October 2025 report from the National Association of Veterans Program Administrators on the impact of missed payments and the government shutdown into the record, as it has direct quotes from beneficiaries and hardship and emotional stress that has been put on our veterans and beneficiaries. So, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to put this report into the hearing record.
Without objection, sure.
Well, thanks. And so, Ms. Haycock-Lohman, what impact, you talked about your own personal experience with delayed benefits. What impact does 4 months of missed benefits have on someone?
Most Chapter 35 recipients are children. They are between the ages of 18 and 26. They are young adults. They don't have savings. They generally don't have other income or benefits coming in. So 4 months of no payments means 4 months of missed rent, 4 months of not making car payments, scrambling to pay for food, things like that these young adults should not be having to deal with. This is a pretty young community. They don't have that savings. They generally don't have credit, and it also opens them up to predatory actors, things like looking for payday lenders, title loans, emergency situations when you're that desperate to make sure you don't get evicted.
You made an important point. There are a lot of folks that are just not moving money between accounts to be able to deal with the lack of benefits being paid on time. And so you mentioned that people aren't necessarily whole even if their benefits have been paid.
Correct.
Well, I appreciate that. And, can you talk about other ways that you think VA should be acting to address this? You gave us a list of things that you would hope VA could take under consideration, including making the hotline permanent, ensuring that that's always open for GI Bill beneficiaries, making sure that those stakeholders' calls get back online. So, what can we work with you on to ensure that VA is, taking steps that are going to help either prevent this from happening again, but also, making sure ultimately that people who have these tough cases and aren't getting their answers have some way of getting through the system?
A big piece of that is transparency and working with the VSO community. We are oftentimes talking to survivors, veterans, more closely and daily than the VA generally is. So we are hearing these stories, but we're also messaging to them. We put out newsletters. We have social media with large followings. We have ability to make sure this information is getting to the community that it needs to. When VA is sending out, they have not sent out really anything specific on this to date, but we have newsletters and things that are hitting the population that are actually read more closely than large things from VA that are in legalese, that they might not understand what exactly that VA email says, but the way we're able to word it, because we're not tied to those legal rules, makes it a little easier for survivors to understand. But if we don't know what's going on, we can't message that to our community.
Sure, certainly. And I think you probably heard the exchange that we had with VA officials on the first panel. Congress was kept in the dark on this. VSOs were kept in the dark. Beneficiaries were kept in the dark. That level of transparency, you think that would have helped individuals, even if they know their benefits were going to be late, just knowing what was going on and being able to plan would have been of some value to folks.
Absolutely, because they could have, we could have messaged this out to survivors. We could have worked more closely ahead of time with some of our partner scholarship organizations and the other programs out there that support survivors to make sure that, instead of this very scrambling of trying to make payments, that we were working with them and getting them into some of these other programs to help offset the immediate costs earlier instead of, waiting until it was too late because we didn't know what was happening.
Well, I thank you for your testimony today and answering those questions and for being patient with us too. This is an important issue, and we want to continue to engage with you. And you often help us understand how veterans are receiving information, how beneficiaries are encountering challenges with programs, and so your feedback is so critical. Thanks for being here. I yield back.
Very good. I want to thank our witness on the second panel and our witnesses earlier today for being here to discuss the ways that VA can resolve the issue of delayed payments and ensure that this problem doesn't happen again. And while Chairman Van Orden couldn't be here today, he takes these issues very seriously, and he conveyed that to me and to all of us on this committee. And this won't be our final hearing on the digital GI Bill this Congress. With that, I'm going to yield to, well, I want to dismiss our panel now and then yield to Ranking Member Pappas for any concluding remarks.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I think this was an important hearing today. And what is clear is that the problem is not fully solved. We need to continue to dedicate more time to examining it, especially as we enter the spring 2026 school semester. People that we hear from the most, veterans, families, survivors themselves, need to have a larger voice, and I would like to receive testimony from more VSOs on how their members have been impacted. I also want to note that we were only discussing Chapter 35 benefits today. Our committee has received reports of delayed benefits in Chapter 31, VR&E, and Chapter 33, the post-9/11 GI Bill, during the fall 2025 school semester. So we must conduct rigorous bipartisan oversight to identify and address benefits payments issues in those programs as well. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I would like to have a follow-up hearing on these Chapter 35 delays when we get back from the holiday recess, where we have appointees of the President testifying. We as Congress must assert our Article I powers to conduct oversight and demand answers from those attempting to sweep failure under the rug. Those in charge must be held to account. With that, I would like to thank our witnesses for their flexibility, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Pappas. And again, thank you to all of our witnesses who are here today. This won't be the last time we examine this issue, and we are going to really extract expectations from the VA around what is the appropriate amount of time under which an approval will take place. What is the target time that we are going to have? How are we going to hold to that standard? And what is the methodology that we're going to follow to get there? And as I said on the subcommittee in which I serve as chairman on the Technology and Modernization Subcommittee, there's quite a bit of overlap with this area of jurisdiction as well, and look forward to working with the members of this subcommittee in that effort, in that pursuit, as well as our folks at the VA that we will be working with as well. Thank you again to all of our witnesses. Thank you to the ranking member. And I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. Without objection, so ordered. And with that, this hearing is adjourned.